Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. We're at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis. My guest today is Elizabeth Ries. She is co-host of Twin Cities Live on KSTP-TV and co-host of Best to the Nest podcast. Elizabeth, I have so many things to ask you about, but first, I know your biggest personal accomplishment was becoming a mother.
For sure, 100%.
And take
Who would
us
have thought?
into that. Not surprising to hear that from you, but take us into those revelations because you were living a fabulous life, got a great husband, then you become a mother.
You know, getting to become a mother, interestingly enough, was not something I thought was going to be as fulfilling as it is. You know, I was I've always been very driven and very focused on accomplishing what I want to accomplish. And I was intentional about thinking about motherhood and understanding that it is something that, you know, if I met the right person and wanted to end up having a family, that I thought that that was something I was open to. But I was never a person who thought being a mother was the be all end all, that I had to become a mother in order to feel this fulfilled life. And so it's almost just been then the icing on the cake, where it's been a surprisingly amazing and fun and fulfilling and deepening experience for me that I just kind of went, wow, this is better than I thought, which has been really exciting about it. Because I think I didn't put so much weight on it. Oh, gosh, they're little muffins, Roshini. I just want to chomp on them.
You got one of each.
Yep. I have a 4.5-year-old little girl, Bernadette, and then I have a 2-year-old boy, Franklin. And
great names.
They've got big names, and they're just bursting with potential and personality, and they love life. That's the most fun thing about being around them, is seeing how much they love everything about life. And I think, you know, my husband and I are like that. We find a lot of joy. We love to have fun. But just watching their little independent spirits and watching them take things in. And I don't know, it's even little things, Roshini, like when I see my daughter and my son, they run everywhere they go. You know, when we're going to go into the grocery store, I mean, it's like, we are going, let's go. And you just sort of are reminded of the joys of these little simple things in life that kids appreciate that we lose as we get older.
It's a great reality check.
It's a great reality check. And so if you don't have children, being around them, finding friends who have children to hang out with little ones, just to soak that in a little bit, I think is really good for people.
Do they understand that their mother is a TV talk show host?
That Bernie does. Bernie asked my husband recently, "Are we on TV right now?" And they were in the backyard. He said, "Well, no, Mama's on TV, but you know, for work." She said, "No, right now, are we on TV?" And Jay was like, "Okay, no, we're not on TV right now, but that's what Mama does for her job." So I think Bernie understands it a little bit. Franklin, you know, he doesn't know anything. He's just like, "Who's giving me a cheese stick?" Where.
She is starting to kind of probe into it.
Yeah. She understands it. She kind of gets what I do. You know, she'll see clips on TV or things like that and go, or if a commercial pops on the TV and she sees me, there's Mama. That's Mama. But to them, that's just normal.
So you went from being in the world of news into this talk show world.
Yeah, I worked in news from the time I was 21 until I was 28 about. And I'd always had a news background before that. I just knew that live television was where my heart was, and that was what I wanted to do. But news always felt not like the right fit for me. Even from the beginning, I remember feeling a little bit like, okay, I have to sort of play that I'm this person.
The news reporter.
Yeah, and I remember when I got to KSTP, I got a big job at KSTP, which is like, if you're working in small market TV, and I went to Duluth, I went to Green Bay, and then you get a job in Minneapolis, it is a huge deal. And it was so exciting. You know this, Roshini. And I remember when I got the job and I looked around the newsroom at all of the other reporters. And these were like Mark Albert. All these people who are like, they're amazing reporters. And I was looking around, Tom Hauser, looking around the newsroom. And I remember thinking, I'm not getting the same thing out of this that they are. I'm just not getting the same thing out of this. When they would break a big story, or there would be breaking news, or they would, dig into something, they just got this high. They loved it. They lived for it. And I was feeling, I loved being in live television. I loved producing a project every day. I loved telling stories. I loved talking to people, but it was just clear that the content wasn't the right fit for me. And so I was able to make the move to Twin Cities Live, which was just by the grace of God. I mean, it was just a miracle. And then I finally found my home. And so I was able to find a home in the place that had given me a great shot and has given me so much support. It's been good.
You've been in that role with Twin Cities Live for 10 years.
For 10 years.
More than 10 years.
Yeah, just over.
And growing, and it's led to other things. It led to your Best to the Nest podcast, which is a whole other deal. Tell people about that.
It's a really exciting project, and you know this from podcasts, and if you're listening to a podcast, which we are right now, it's a great intimate conversation, and it's just a way to connect with people that I've never been able to connect with people before. So I have, Twin Cities Live. I contribute some things to the newsroom, and then I also do radio on MyTalk 107.1. And so I have a lot of different, of the different mediums that I'm working through. But the podcasting is so incredibly rewarding and connecting. And so the concept of Best to the Nest is pretty simple. It's that idea that a lot of us go out into the world and we are super nice to the person at the grocery store, or like, Roshini, I come to hang out with you and it's like, oh, it's so great to see you. And then you go home and who gets the worst of you? The people that you love the most in the place you love the most. And so I co-host the podcast with my former radio co-host, Marjorie Punnett, who's well known in the Twin Cities. And Marjorie gave me some marriage advice when we were on the radio together. She said, we always tried in our family to bring the best of ourselves home, because it's just not fair for everybody else to get the best of you and then the crap comes home. And I said, oh, it's like bringing your best to the nest, because I have chickens in my backyard. So I always relate everything to a nest. And Marjorie and I laughed and we chuckled, and that was in a commercial break, but that idea stuck. And now 4 years later, we launched a podcast in January, and we just learned we're #1 in our category on Apple Podcasts of Home and Garden.
That's amazing.
And it is really taking off. And I'm just hearing from people who say that these conversations are really inspiring them. And it's a lot like these conversations, Roshini, where it's getting real and not being afraid to be open about what are the struggles, and then with a real purpose of living life with intention, being connected with other people, and then finding inspiration all around you.
Exactly. And this podcast, Real Leaders with Roshini, has really been, on my work side of my life, the biggest joy of my year.
I totally agree.
Yes, and
we had coffee and talked about
this.
this.
And it's really meant to be this inspirational podcast. And yes, you're all leaders in your respective areas, but I don't even think of it as a leadership podcast, even though it kind of is. But it's really this inspirational podcast. I'm inspired by you, by all the people I talk with, and they inspire each other. And it's fun seeing them meet in different places. And, it is a really great medium. How do you look at the different media that you are a part of, and give me some commentary on communication these days, the best and the worst? What do you want to see? How do you want to see these different media being used for good? And what's your advice for people to avoid the baggage and the bad?
I think authentic storytelling is so important. And I think when you have a lot of different outlets, that just encourages authentic storytelling. That's what resonates with people. So I see that more and more in communication. And I think people are more willing to just be open and be honest about what's going on in their life, what's working, what's not. I think the bad is a lot coming along with social media. That's where I just see the worst of people. I mean, it's such a double-edged sword, because I have such great connections with people and relationships with people. And yet at the same time, it's where people can be their worst.
And sometimes anonymously, or
that they just don't get it. I don't know. I've sort of, I kind of vacillate back and forth, but I've really worked on boundaries with social media. I take Instagram, for example. I do a lot of Instagram work at home. And so that means Instagram is in my nest. And so if there is a comment or a message that's sent to me that doesn't lift me up, that is intentionally trying to tear me down, that person is blocked and out, because that does not get to come into my home. It's a different thing when I'm at work and I get a work email or something. I have to, I can work through that at work and figure it out. But if something is coming into my home, it's precious territory. And so if you get to come in there, then you have to behave appropriately.
I really love that you have the boundaries.
Yeah,
You've
I do.
created your own rules for this. You live by those rules. And they might not be someone else's rules, but those are the rules that will govern your Instagram account or your social accounts. And people see that and it's authentic to you, and that's part of your brand.
Yeah, that's just how it goes.
Another thing that has become part of your brand, these chickens that live with you. Your viewers know about them. You and I have talked about them.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about these chickens and why do you have chickens?
I have a flock of chickens in my backyard. I live in Minneapolis, and I've had chickens now for about 6 years. We had them at our old house in Minneapolis. We just moved last October to a different house just like a mile down the road. And, you know, a lot of this, it's interesting how the chickens came to be. I feel like I kind of had them before it was cool to have chickens. And I mean, it was a long time ago.
You were a trailblazer with chickens.
I mean, we got them, and I really feel strongly about, I want my home to be producing something. I don't want it always to be this place where I feel like all my resources sort of go to die. You know, you kind of joke that your house is like a money pit, right? And if you live in an old house like I do, I mean, this is the truth, sister. You want me to talk about plumbing bills? I'll talk about plumbing bills. It's really...
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, that's a different Plumbing Bills with Roshini. That can be the spinoff show. But there are a lot of things about your home that can start to feel like exhausting. Like it's just sucking up everything. And it's really fun for me. This is why I'm so passionate about gardening, why I love having chickens, why I love cooking. I love baking.
You love growing your own food.
I love growing my own food, all of
so
these
it
things.
matches.
Yeah, it's all about making your home as sustainable as it can be and making it a place that is like just teeming with life. Like you're growing things, you're creating things. It's not just something that you go out and you have to leave the house to work all day to take your money and then shovel it into something that you have to pay for to fix. It becomes more of a little ecosystem.
I love that you say that, and it gives me another layer of appreciation for my husband, who, as you know, is a gourmet cook.
Yes.
But he will be cooking, and I'll be sitting there working at the table. He walks out into our deck garden, and he'll pluck some herbs.
It's the best.
And he comes back in, and it just dawned on me the other day. I thought, wow, I mean, not everyone does this. And I've just taken for granted, probably. He just does this.
That's where I started, too. I mean, I didn't have a house for a long time. When I was early in TV, I was living in apartments. And I started just growing things on the balcony. So I just bought like these cheap pots from Target, put some soil in it, and then started growing things. And it never ceases to amaze me, the joy of going out to your yard and getting food to eat for free. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I know there are costs. You know, we had to build a chicken coop. We have to pay for the chicken feed. And so,
but you need some leeway here for all the plumbing bills.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So there are costs and things like that. But it's like when you go out and you can just pluck, tomatoes and you just bring them in and you eat them. It is the greatest thing. It's just really great. It fills me up. It's like a moving meditation. I mean, I clean the chicken coop. It sounds so dumb, but I enjoy cleaning the chicken coop. And I'm not a person who likes cleaning things. Like I don't want to clean a toilet, but I love
the chicken coop,
cleaning the chicken coop because it just makes
chicken's poop. You don't mind?
I don't mind
that.
That turns into compost, which goes into the garden, and then
which continues to sustain,
to sustain everybody. And so it just makes me feel. It makes me feel really empowered, number one, because I just feel like there's a little bit of me that has some survivalist in me.
You're your own Lion King story over at that house. And on that note, one of my favorite things about you is what I'm going to call your Instagram show, Between Two Planters.
Yes.
I was recently sharing this with my running friend, Cindy. I go, have you seen Elizabeth Ries's Between Two Planters? She said, what are you talking about? And she looked it up, and we were dying laughing. Tell people about this. It is so fun.
I've only done a few episodes of it, and it started because I work with this planter subscription company that's great. Shout out to Simple and Grand. They're fabulous. So I have planters on my front porch from them. And so then
You literally sit between them.
Yeah. So
between
then
two planters.
I decided I'm going to sit between them and talk about what's going on in my day. And so I just do it like, I don't know, I've done 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, because I have been looking at your feed for the next episode. This thing, it just makes me laugh.
I know. I got new fall planters too. I got to sit out there between them so you can see them. They're really pretty. They have mums.
We're in a new month now.
I just kind of sit down and talk about what I like. I'm hoping Zach Galifianakis doesn't send me a cease and desist because of his Between Two Ferns, which I obviously ripped off the idea.
So you really did rip it off. Yes. Now you've just said that. You should have kept that to yourself. That's now gone down.
But it's not,
it's different.
I'm not nearly as funny.
Right. It's a different word.
Yes.
It's no derivation of
and
ferns.
It's a 60 seconds. There are no ferns in those planters at all.
Good.
Not a single fern.
That will help your
I actually
your
have that in my
case.
contract. No ferns allowed.
That will help your court case in a big way. Elizabeth Ries, I have to wind down by asking you.
It can't be over yet. What are you doing? Is this over already?
Well,
How fast is this?
Do you have more time with us?
Of course.
Oh, okay, we'll keep chatting. I love it.
Should we do a couple
No
episodes?
guest yet has said this can't be over yet.
Well, it's fun with you.
I want to get into the relationship.
Great.
I always ask my married guests.
Fabulous.
How do you and your hubby keep it real, keep it sexy?
Man. Well, he was just a guest on Best to the Nest, which was really interesting. Jay did a great job talking about our relationship. We do, we really try to connect and we try to be intentional about time together. And I think we give each other a lot of grace. Jay just had a couple tough days at work. It's funny that you say, because I just texted him this morning and I just said, listen, the thing I love most about you is that you want to win for our family. And he didn't have a win at work that he wanted to have. And that is hard for him.
That's so sweet.
And so I love that about him.
And you text, just that you can verbalize it.
Yeah, I get it. And I think we understand each other. We see a counselor. That's a big help. Making sure that you've got somebody.
Just an objective voice.
Somebody to help, because when you have two very demanding, very social jobs, and then you have two little kids
who are also very social and demanding.
Yes, it's easy to just kind of go, wait a second, where are we? So intentional connection, conversations. And then I think a lot of it too is that we just have, some of it does come down to this understanding that we're in it for the long haul. And so if today wasn't great, we're going to try to do better tomorrow. It's you have to give each other grace in that, because not every day is going to be great. And when you look back at like people who've been married for 40 or 50 years, I'm sure they can tell you that there was a whole year that they didn't really like each other in there.
Or big segments of other years.
Right. Like, remember February of 1979? It was terrible. I think you have to just go, this is one day out of all the days. Let's do better tomorrow. We're going to do better for ourselves and better for each other tomorrow.
I do think that's a good note to wind down on. Can I wind down?
Fine. As long as you promise to have me back.
You're coming back. There will be another episode.
Coffee with you always lasts much longer than this, so I'm finding it a little bit offensive that this is short.
This is a 15 to 20 minute podcast. I'm trying to stay on brand. Elizabeth Ries, a joy. Thank you. I really mean it. Until next time, keep it real.